mine have started this thing of coming into the room just like, crying and yelling at me. And so there's one at my feet right now. So I'm hoping we'll see if we get any performances during the show.
Well, it kind of felt like before you went live that y'all were getting ready to have an intervention with me.
Ben, we all love you. We're all here because we love you.
We've written this letter to tell you how your flying has affected us.
And we're going to read it. Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we got a big night tonight.
Yeah.
Yes.
We're going to put our work in.
It's the double.
So we've talked about putting one in the can for over a year now, and this is the first time we're doing it.
We did one about a month and a half ago.
Maybe, yeah, but not like back to. Or was it back to back?
No, it's not back to back.
It was like Sunday night
on a
and then
different night.
Monday. Yeah. AJ's here. Well, AJ's here. We can get started.
Well, it's 8:00. AJ's here.
It's all that matters.
Let's light the fires.
Peter.
Welcome to the Midlife Pilot Podcast. What is it like to become a pilot in midlife? The challenges are unique, but so are the rewards. Hosts Ben, Brian, and Ted talk learning to fly, growing as pilots, and the joy of flying to destinations. The purpose of the podcast is not to teach, but to share knowledge and experiences. Okay, checklists are complete. Let's get the show started.
Hey there, and welcome to the Midlife Pilot Podcast, where we share the experiences and the challenges of flying in midlife. Whether you're a seasoned pilot, training for a rating, or just thinking about getting into aviation, we'd like to think of this podcast as your aviation companion and your weekly dose of aviation inspiration. My name is Ben. I'm a pilot with an IFR rating and a commercial certificate based in the metro Atlanta area. I fly a Cessna 182 we like to call the Beast. Joining me tonight, as always, I am pleased to have my friends with me. Brian, a private pilot in Nashville, home of the Bachelorette Super Charlie, flying a Cherokee 180 he likes to call Lucy. Hello, Brian.
Well, hello, and I'm glad to be here. And I'm excited to do our big double header tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. Also joining us from the land of Portlandia, our sport pilot extraordinaire, flying a Flight Design CTLS, we like to call the Egg. Hello, Ted. How are you, sir?
Hey, I'm doing really well.
Awesome.
Yeah, nice to be here.
Glad to have you. Another fun night, and we're going to get a lot of each other here in the next couple of hours, probably more than we want.
It's going to be like sort of like how you feel about family around the end of December.
Yeah.
I don't want to see you again for a year.
Maybe at least until the spring.
For our podcast listeners, this is nice and confusing. You're going to get this episode right after we do it, and the second one we're putting in the can, and it'll come out in a week. So, if you're paying attention, listening to the podcast, you may get some of that continuity between the two, and we'll see how well we do at it. Yeah.
We'll try to keep that in mind. So tonight we're going to be talking about perfectionism in aviation, striving for excellence, settling for adequacy.
And hopefully somewhere in the middle.
You know what? Sometimes adequate is just fine. Before we get into the housekeeping, we want to give everybody an update that we've kind of got our next fly-in location settled. We're working on dates, and we're working with some of the facilities there. I think it may have been mentioned in the Discord server, and Brian actually mentioned it last week and kind of let it slip. But we're going to make you go back and listen to that episode if you want to know where we're talking about. But it is continuing communications, and hopefully in the next couple of weeks we'll have some more things nailed down, and we'll keep you posted on it.
Can I tell you something funny? I was driving down the street yesterday, and I was driving by the compound that we had for the last Nashville fly-in, And I was,
you mean the compound we didn't have for the last national
right?
flight?
Yeah, we had
Yes.
for a moment, but never really had. It was sold. Our reservation that we'd had for months was canceled because they decided to sell the place, and they just nixed everybody's reservations or whatever. So it was 3 or 4 houses in a row, all contiguous compound, and yes, they sold it out from underneath us. That was a lot of fun, scrambling to, you talk about these plans for so long, and then it's like, okay, now we have to do all the planning all over again. But I was driving by, and I just thought you guys would get a kick out of this. The signs are still out front for sale, but it says finally sale pending. That's how long it's been.
Wow. Yeah.
So let's see, that was April. So that was a solid 8 months.
Yeah, they really needed to make sure we were not there so they could sell it 8 months later.
That's right. Even if the actual sale occurred, because a lot of times there's a lag time between we put that sign up, I'll bet it still was a solid 6 or 7 months at least.
Yeah.
Crazy. Brian, why don't you help us out and tell us about all the items how people can engage with us and stay in touch with us?
We call it housekeeping, Ben.
It's
He's
not
never heard
very
of it.
aviation themed, and that's why I'm trying to avoid it at this point in time.
Belly
We need to work
wash.
on that.
It's a belly wash.
The belly wash.
Right. So we're grateful for you guys making this the best pilot community that we know of, a positive space where we share everything from training experiences, shared personal minimums, tackle ownership challenges, review flight plans, and best of all, make new aviation friends or tolerate the existing ones, in this case with you guys, right? At least, but I think we do a good job of, once a week is good enough for us, right?
I would agree.
Yeah. And then if we hang out for a fly-in, it's a couple nights, it's fine.
Once or twice a year, I agree.
But they could make a reality show out of, like putting us in a house for a month. It would not work out. It would be great.
Week. They could make a reality show from a week.
Oof.
But we need to make sure we include one dull geek in the house, because that would really...
Oh, that would set it off. Yes.
Yeah.
That'd be perfect. Well, we're not going to do that for now, but you can connect with us. You can join our Patreon community for $1 a month. That's 25 cents per episode. What is that per minute? Do we know? That takes math.
It's about a quarter a cent per minute.
Okay.
And I also dispute 25 cents because it's about 24 cents because we have 52 episodes in the year. But we'll go with 25. It's easier.
Okay. Still a pretty good deal. Pretty good. You can access exclusive content and our Discord community. 10% supports the Freedom Aviation Network's anti-human trafficking efforts. You can watch us live on YouTube Mondays, 8 p.m. Eastern, like your folks here are doing right now, and we're glad you're here. Share your stories at Midlife Pilot Podcast at gmail.com. Send us anything that you want. Well, just about anything. Let's just leave it at that. We read all the messages, and you might even hear yourself on the show. For everything Midlife Pilot Podcast, community feedback, merch, dad hats, and more, visit midlifepilotpodcast.com.
Thank you, Brian.
Yeah.
Ted, we had some new supporters and existing supporters making some changes. You want to tell us about those?
Yeah, this was upgrade week, it seems. So our new Patreon supporters, at the Landomatic level, we have Anthony M. At the Hershey Bar level, we have Ryan K., who upgraded, the Badger Pilot, who upgraded, Chad W., who upgraded, and John M. And then at the Beast level, we have Steve S., who upgraded. People tend to upgrade from Landomatic to Hershey Bar so they get the full Discord experience. The Landomatic level just gives you a taste of what's going on, lets you see announcements. It's a good level when we have events going on, because we make sure to put those channels fairly public. So if we make an announcement, oh, hey, we're not meeting up Friday morning doing this, that goes in those wider channels. But yeah, so people tend to like that Hershey bar level, which is why Badger Pilot, who said they didn't have to do much maintenance repairs on their plane, that he could afford to go back up to that Hershey bar level. So
good stuff.
Yeah. So we
Thank you,
for
everybody.
that.
Yes,
Yeah.
we appreciate it.
And one other little funny thing here is going to be that we are doing a double header tonight. So when we get to the Patreon section of the second edition, we need somebody to between now and an hour from now. No, it's fine.
Yeah.
Ben S has upgraded his membership level to Shops level.
Yeah.
Ben S2.
So
Ted T also upgraded his membership level.
Wow, what a coincidence. Yeah. So Discord, Mark, Mr. Wendell Geek, helped me out this week. He pointed out a couple of discussions that were really good. The one is the most midlife pilot podcast topic ever, which is recommendations for bifocals for flying. Not just bifocals, but flying bifocals. So unlike
Guarantee you there's not a 25-year-old out there on the earth that would identify with that conversation.
Exactly. Yeah. We're
Nor
not the
should they.
1 out of 3 aviation videos that's, giving a discount code for flying eyes. We need the bifocal edition for our crowd. So yeah, I thought that was good. The other one just happened yesterday. There was a conversation about how close should you taxi behind a jet, like a commercial, like a 737. And Mike Alpha Golf went into the weeds on it. He pulled up actual research, actual citations, diagrams of what the blast is behind especially behind a 737. To summarize that for everyone else, figure you need to be 500 feet behind a commercial airliner and 200 feet behind like a private jet. So that's good to know, because I've always been back there and wondered if I was back far enough or not, because you don't want to be a mile behind that Southwest jet in front of you, because you're going to,
unless you're in a plastic egg. At that point,
exactly.
you might want to be 1,000 feet behind them.
Man, if he throttles up to get on the runway, I can just take off. Like,
Exactly.
just go vertical right then.
3 Whiskey Tango, you are not cleared for takeoff. I couldn't help it.
Exactly.
By the way, I have a Flying Eyes code if people want to use it. It's just, but I don't remember what it is. I'll put it in the notes or something. I never talk about it, but anyway, I'm not a very good affiliate.
I would say that I just purchased a pair of Flying Eyes bifocals.
Oh, nice.
And I really, really like them. They're better for flying where the lines aren't good for computers, but for the cockpit they're great. So when did
your eyes go bad to begin with?
Yeah,
I got glasses when I was 24.
I had 20/10 vision all the way up until I was 39, and then at about 41, I fell off a cliff. Literally, like went from. And my distant vision is still very good, but up close, my ophthalmologist said, the problem is your arms aren't long enough.
Yeah.
Can't hold the paper out too far enough. So yeah, it was 41 is where it went. Everything was fine to I can't read anything.
I've worn glasses since I was 5. I haven't gone to the bifocals yet. I have gone to the doctor and said, after being on the computer all day, do I need bifocals? And he said no, and he just gave me a slightly different prescription that I wear during the day. But it's only a matter of time. Just like if you don't wear glasses, it's only a matter of time until you're going to need them. It's only a matter of time until you need bifocals. So I try not to make fun of that. Yeah.
What's the difference between bifocals and progressive lenses?
There's no lines.
That's it. It's just an aesthetic thing.
It's an aesthetic
it's a
thing.
gradation or whatever.
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay. So then,
and they take some getting used to, because they do a very unscientific, or my guys did. They just kind of
put a dot.
You focus on things, and they put a dot on your lens, and said, "Yep, that's where it's going to be." And they grind it down, I guess.
I've had I've had problems with mine, my progressive lenses, where I've had lenses made and whatever the horizon line was of that change was just not in the right place, especially for flying. And what I did was I had them sort of raise slightly that horizon of where it goes to the other, whatever you call it, thing, the closer seeing thing. So when I was in the plane, because when I was in the plane before, the bottom part of the panel was kind of clear, and then the top half of the panel was starting to blur a little bit. But I got them to raise that horizon a little bit, and then it sort of meets more nicely with the panel. But now when I'm driving, I have to kind of tilt my head slightly down a little bit, because it's just a different seating.
When I got these from Flying Eyes, and I still think they're great, and there's no glasses that are more comfortable than theirs, and I am not sponsored by them. The line I thought was going to be too low because I was trying them out here in my office, and I kept lifting my head up to try to see out of them. But I wanted to give them a shot in the airplane, and they're actually perfect because the line is even with the edge of my glare shield.
Yeah.
So it's got so it's lined up perfect. Now, maybe they knew that, and I don't know, but I was worried when I first got them, and then when I actually tried them out in the airplane, they were fantastic. So go get your Flying Eyes. Use discount code. Something
Brian
will be on the show
Siskind.
notes.
Yeah,
I think it's just Siskind. I don't know.
Yeah. It'll be in the show notes, though. Yeah.
Tonight, let's get away from perfect vision and talk about perfection, maybe not so much. But before, I did want to check in about Mr. Siskind and any aviation updates, any personal flying you guys have been doing.
Oh, yeah, I've been doing a little bit. It's kind of funny. I had, you have really good landings and everything, and then that's great. But then there's this other sort of top tier of landings that you remember being like that. They were so good, like your top 5 landings you can kind of remember. You know what I mean? Like we're like the just unbelievable. Did we even land? Kind of landings. Yeah. I had a probably up there, in the top tier landing of did we even land kind of landing. And that's definitely, especially in the Cherokee where Hershey bar, it's hard to really fully grease a landing in a Cherokee, is my experience. I mean, tapered wing all day, no problem. But the Hershey bar, it's a different beast. But I had a really good landing and everything was great. Parked the plane, went home, came back out the next morning to go fly, and one of the tires is flat. And I'm just like, what? How is this happening? So I think that I greased it so much that I finally, I don't know. I don't know what I did, but anyway, it was one of those things where you almost wish that you had a hard landing so you had something to blame it on, or I guess I did that. But when it's just, and we've been through so many tubes this year. Is this normal? 3, 4?
Wow.
That happened to us about, I think in 2019, we went through 3 tubes in a 6-month time period.
Yeah.
And we had the wheel looked at to make sure there were no cracks that were, pinching the tube and popping it.
Yeah.
And finally we just said they all came from the same shop. And we don't know if they were defective, but there was another manufacturer who it's a more expensive tube, but it was hardier, if you would. And that was 2019, and I don't think we've changed it either. Changed it since.
Well, as Curly says in the chat, are the Aero Classics, and that's the Aero Classic tubes, which are extra thick, and that's
probably what it is. I don't know. I wasn't actually part of the process of doing all that. My brother-in-law handled it, but that's probably who they are. But yeah, we have not had any issues, so maybe take a cue from that.
Well, it's always at John Toon. And so I was telling the guy, I was telling the guy, I said, what are you doing? Are you guys putting push pins out here, or what is happening? And he was like, he even said, I know, it actually is kind of crazy. There's a lot of flat tires here. I'm just like,
Oh, really?
Okay. Yeah.
Well, I was about to talk about tire pressure, and Grizzly's saying the same thing, which is certainly if your tire pressure is low, you're much more likely to
Yeah.
damage the tube.
No, and that's what's funny is that I just
Yeah.
had the strut service done, and all the tires, everything was just absolutely optimal, perfect, everything.
Yeah.
So, so anyway, we've had a little bit of those kind of maintenance-y kind of things going on, but but some good flying. So, but I did have one little thing that happened. Was it Friday? It was Friday. I was at Bowling Green and I was headed up, and so I was waiting at the hold short, ready to go, and there was I want to say it was a 170 behind me. I know it was a tail wheels, either 170 or something like that. But so we were just waiting there, and when I got up to the hold short, taking off runway 21, there was a Metroliner on a 5-mile final, 6-mile final for runway 3. So I did what I think was the right thing to do. Ben, I can run this by you, but you know what I did? You know what I did is I didn't take off. I waited so that I was not hurling myself directly at an incoming airplane that's much faster than mine.
I mean, you're taking a little bit of the fun out of it, but
yeah,
no, I'm teasing. Of course, I would not have taken off at all. I would agree.
Yeah,
with
and maybe it was 4-mile final or something, but which was generous, but it's still like for me, I'm like, okay, faster plane, untowered airport. I'm not, opposite direction. I'm not doing anything. And then the Metroliner is on the roll. It had just landed and was on the roll, and the young guy behind me in this tail wheel, he goes, hey, 5116 Lima, do you think that you're actually going to be like, I don't know, able to go soon, or like how much longer are you going to wait around, kind of thing? And I just said, well, I said, well, when the Metroliner is off, on the opposite runway, is off, then I will go, and he didn't say anything else, but I just realized he didn't have any concept that was happening. I wonder if he even had I guess he had a radio because he bothered me, but it was just kind of weird. I just thought,
here's the thing. If I don't care if he was on a 6-mile final.
Yeah.
For me, the mental capacity it would use instead of focusing on landing is I'm going to be petrified about where, if I'm in that Metroliner, where that Cherokee 180 is when he's taking off. Well, and you could have turned out 3 miles ahead of him. It doesn't matter. Knowing that you're announcing, hey, guess what? I'm going, and I'm going to be a potential conflict. So have fun with that.
Yeah, when the plane coming in opposite direction has 18 more seats or whatever than yours or whatever it is, you tend to just defer, and so that's what I was doing. But I don't think that the guy behind me had any idea. He was pissed that I wasn't taking off, and this Metroliner was actually on the runway, coming in. So Anyway,
there is another option. It could be that he did know it was coming in. Either way, it's a bad look for the tail dragger behind you. Right?
Yeah.
Like, you hope he didn't know, because if he did, that's really problematic.
I can see, I guess, if you're in a plane that can take off in 400 or 500 feet and you can just immediately pretty much put yourself into a left crosswind, and you're only at that point 1,000 feet down the runway, and this, I don't know, not with the Metroliner on the runway, but like say, if
he's on a 3-mile final,
so like I can see that, but it was happening fast. He was coming in fast, and I just thought,
again,
this is something I'm not gonna even have this be a thing. And the Metroliner was being very good about making calls, and he heard me. We were talking without talking. You know how that goes.
Yeah. It's an etiquette thing. And it's, do you want to put undue stress
Mm-hmm.
on you and the pilot that's on final? And apparently the 170 pilot didn't care about it at all and was, or
Yeah, I
just
said
wasn't aware of it. Maybe he was oblivious.
I said I was holding short, and incoming traffic in sight on runway 3. Da 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 da. I guess he just never caught it. But anyway, so that was just a funny little goofy thing that happened. But I got some good flying in, and you try to take advantage of those mid temperature days now. When
Yep.
it's in the 40s or 50s, it feels luxurious. So I was able to do some of that. Yeah.
Ted, how about you?
Yeah. Yeah, our Midwest people are saying that's a mid temperature. That's
Yeah.
balmy
Yeah,
for them.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got to log 2 flights this week, which was amazing because it's been 3 weeks. It's
And
my
it's December.
it's my only December flights in my logbook. I got in a short flight, really just in the pattern. It was really bumpy. There was a PIREP from 2 hours before for low level wind shear, so I was really paying attention before I went out in that one, and it was fine. Thankfully, you kind of pay attention to what's going on in the METARs for that. But then the next day, I was sitting at home and I really wanted to go out. I was going to go to the airport at least, and I was looking, and it's like all the airports are reporting low VFR, which is really surprising because I'm looking outside and I see blue skies. And
What's low VFR?
sorry, what's the term? Marginal VFR?
Marginal VFR.
Yeah, terms. Yeah.
Okay, I
So
was like,
it's like how is the visibility or the ceiling low when I can see blue sky? So I was like, okay, well, it's fine. I'm going to go out to the airport. I've got some stuff to do out there anyway. I'm not going to fly if it's as bad as it seems. And I went out there, and the METAR from my airport improved a tiny bit. Some of the others were still low. And I was like, okay, great. Let's go out and fly in this. And sure enough, half of town was covered in basically fog and low clouds, and the other side of town was clear. So
Clear to
I have
million.
this advantage of there's kind of a wind tunnel on one side of town, and so that side stayed clear. But
I just did a quick Google search on low VFR, and that's when there's icing on the vegetables.
yeah,
That's
that's close enough. Yeah.
Well,
Also
that's cool.
on that Saturday flight, the turbulent flight, it was my first experience of daytime ATC 0. So I'd gotten an email from our tower, which is very poorly staffed, but they're losing a manager, and then it was going to be without a manager for a little while, and they'll be getting one at the end of the month. And so when I got to the airport, I wasn't too surprised to just hear the robotic voice on for weather. But it's weird when you're at a towered airport. You're like, okay, wait, I need to do everything on the tower frequency because that's Unicom. I'm not going to use ground now, and that kind of coordination of that is really strange. So, yeah, it was nice to get out and fly.
Nice. I you know what? I took a page out of Dr. Siskin's book, and I so Saturday, wake up. I said, Terry, which festivals are we going to? She goes, oh, I was going to go with my mom and my sister. And I was like, okay, I guess I'll just go do my own thing. Please don't throw me out in the briar patch. But no, I thought about going flying. I called up. Adam was working. Evan was working. So I called up Noah. I'm like, what are you doing? He said, let's go. I don't know. Let's figure something out. And I looked at the weather, and it was like 12 gusts and 20, kind of down the runway. I mean, it was doable weather, but just to go poke holes in the sky and maybe go get $100 hamburger, it just and there were PIREPs, 3,000 feet and moderate turbulence or light chop, whatever it was. I can't remember. But, it was just one of those days where I'm like, you know what? We don't have to fly today. We never have to fly. And so we decided to do something else. But I was kind of on the mindset of going down to Barnstormers or going somewhere and getting a $100 hamburger with them. But we ended up going for a hike, which was just as fun. It was very, very windy as the day progressed.
Yeah.
as the forecast had done. So we chose not to fly for once.
What day was this?
Saturday.
Yeah.
I had asked you Friday
Oh,
night,
right.
I think.
And I said,
You
yeah,
had
the
just
weather.
taken the plane back to Bowling Green.
Yeah, and I was looking at the weather, and I just realized that the only part of the day that's going to be good at all is going to be early, and it got pretty wacky. So I was glad I went that afternoon. I was glad that I didn't entertain you.
Well, and I wanted those hot dogs that at Luke's Landing
Oh,
talked
yeah, yeah.
about, and they're not open on the weekends, so we got to go find a
No.
weekday.
Yeah, Bunyan's Barbecue is
Oh,
where the
yeah.
hot dogs are in Muscle Shoals,
Muscle Shoals. So
and that family business has been there for 50 plus years, and they are the boss, right? Like their hours are like, I don't know, 10 to 4 or something, Monday to
yeah.
Friday. They just work when they want to work or whatever.
You know what? When they make a hot dog that good, more power to them.
That's right. And their barbecue is amazing. If you ever go to Muscle Shoals, they have great airport crew cars. Get yourself over to Bunyan's. Doesn't sound good, but it is.
Yeah, I'll
Well,
put a
why
link
don't
to
we go
that.
ahead and dive into our
Yeah.
topic? Overcoming perfection, finding the right balance, or sometimes it's okay to just be adequate. There's a million different titles we could come up with. But, every so often, Brian and Ted and I get together and we try to come up with a bunch of different topics to cover. And this one has kind of been on my mind for a while. But, Brian, I'm going to ask you to maybe kind of give us an overview of how we want to approach this.
Yeah, well, I think that from a midlife pilot perspective, we mention this a lot, that we are people that are coming into aviation later in life, and we've already been doing a lot of things in life, probably on a professional level or whatever. We're old enough to have experience at something. Everyone's probably an expert, at least in some realm. um, and you're used to being very good, at least at something, and it's hard to not be good at something, and it's hard to take on something new and it not just all come to you right away. And it's something that does take work and practice and effort, and not only to achieve it, but to sustain it and keep it up and grow it. And I think that there's a tendency, and I'm totally projecting here, I'm not saying I don't have this, but I think that we tend to be a little perfectionistic in the way that we go about aviation. And on one hand, that is good because you want to have very high standards. And I think that especially for us that are not, most of us are not doing it professionally. Um, Still take it very, very serious. Safety is real, all these things. And so it's okay to be, striving for perfection. We're not saying don't strive for perfection, but at the same time, within the sort of minutia of all of that pursuit, I think that there is a place for taking a little pressure off yourself and understanding that sometimes I think that the pursuit of perfection can sometimes actually inhibit the very progress that you're trying to achieve, and that can amount to a particular paralysis or slowness to reach those goals. And so I thought this would be a great topic because it does tie perfectly into the midlife mindset, which is something we want to talk about. With it's really the only thing that we're authorities on is our age.
Being midlife.
And so, but the things that I thought would be great for us to go over, and that we kind of agreed that we would go over is, how perfection maybe slowed us down, how sometimes lowering your standard, quote unquote, and saying good enough actually gives you the tools or the confidence you need to go further. And so I really just want to explore the sort of territory between having really, really high standards, realistic expectations, and then all of the space in between, and how sometimes we maybe get in our own way.
Yeah. When this first came up, I kind of knew what I wanted to talk about. And I think the most popular subject or the subject matter, and when we talk about perfection, and I want to maybe hit on it, but there's a lot of other areas we can talk about. But landings, landings is how we judge ourselves, how we judge others, how taking off is not nearly as hard as landing. It's the most dynamic thing that we do. And it wasn't my landings per se, it was leading up to it. We've heard it from YouTubers. I've heard it from my CFI. A good landing is set up by a good approach, and a good approach is set up by a good pattern. And when I first heard that, I took that to heart. And I remember having 3x5 cards of exactly, and this is 25 hours into my training for my private. I mean, I was a newbie. And, I was, all right, I am going, because of the bigger engine, we needed to slow it down. As soon as I turn downwind, it's 10 degrees flaps. And then when I get to base, it's 20 degrees. And final, it's 30 degrees. And I'm going to be at this altitude and this and that and the other. And I was so wrapped up in the approach and making sure that it was absolutely perfect that by the time I got on final, I was high or I was fast or it was rarely stable because I was trying so hard to be perfect in the upwind, the crosswind, the downwind, and the base. And I really think and my instructor said, you need to just relax. You're so wrapped up in doing everything so perfect. You know what? Let's throw 10 degrees flaps in, beam the numbers like everybody else, and let's just see what happens. Maybe we extend your down. He started throwing these different variables in there, and that really helped me out a lot.
That's kind of Brian's way of doing landings, isn't it? It's like there's all these ingredients that you can mix in and experiment with doing it in the different ways and figuring out how to make that recipe end up in the same. Is that a decent way to put it, Brian?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, like real quick, I'll just say that like I think when you're learning, it is important to have a formulaic repetition about how you're going about it, and concentrate on each phase, leg, turn, descent, power, all the little micro pieces of that. But I think that what I have arrived at later now is you just fly the plane. You just do what you need. It's like if you're driving a stick and you're going 55 miles an hour and you're headed towards a steep curve, consider downshifting and turning. It's like you just put the thing where it needs to be, and you have a set of tools that you can use to make that happen in whatever way you wish. So it's a different approach than when you're starting, where it's like, oh my gosh, I think it's the base leg because I was 3 seconds late putting in the second notch of flaps or something, and now like the whole thing's awash, which has happened. That's what happens early on.
There is value to having that perfect formula to learn when you're training, because it's like you need to figure it out one way before you can try improv on it. In software engineering, it's often called the happy path. It's like, okay, there's one path through this website flow that will work. You can do a login, you can click this one place, you can do this. It's going to break if you do anything else. There's so many, anything that most people would do, it won't handle an apostrophe in your name or whatever. That's fine. You've got one way that it works here. That's your happy path through things. And I think that's kind of that idea in learning to land is one repeatable way to do it.
Is newer students need that pathway.
Oh yeah.
But as we talk about as midlifers, sometimes we become overly focused, more on the process and a little bit less on the product.
Yeah. Well, let me tell you though,
I think that's what I'm trying to get through.
Yeah. Well, let me tell you that it's cyclical, because I went through the phase of having a terrible time learning how to land, to the point where I just thought, I'm not cut out for this. Yeah. Then I learned how to land. And then almost as a post-traumatic response, I think that is carried throughout the rest of my flying experience, I have gone into such detail about my landings and filmed from the tail. And I now honestly get a little upset if I land, and it's not just about being on centerline. I get a little ticked if, when I see the footage, that the tire is not in the middle of the centerline stripe. that is the level of symmetry and perfection that I'm going after now all the time. So it went from it's like a bumper cars of self-torture. You just it's
So
I
Ted,
couldn't land, now I could land. Oh, that's not good enough, now I got to go crazy, right? So I'm absolutely a lunatic with this stuff now. So that's my response, PTSD
well,
wise, to being
and I'm
terrible.
going to just Ted, you and I, when we have our meetup, what we're going to do is we're going to buy the biggest, fattest tire, front nose wheel tire that we can. Just even if it's like if it can fit inside the fork, then if it's wider than the white line, then that would really make me happy.
I
But
have a
just
better idea.
what?
Why don't you just on your nose wheel just put some equally distributed felt strips that are dotted, and you have white paint on them, and then wherever you go, there you
Yeah.
are.
There you
Uh,
go.
I think
And
we
there you
should
are.
repaint Bowling Green center stripe so that each stripe is offset from the other, so that so Brian can't land on it perfectly. I've got to pick up this comment from Grizzly that really summarizes what we were saying. He said, "My instructor told me to stop thinking so much and just fly the damn plane."
Mm-hmm.
That was your thing, Ben,
But
right?
yeah, so Brian, you're now obsessed with this center line. Do you think it inhibits you in any way
No,
in any of the rest of your flying?
no,
Okay.
I really don't. I mean, I would be honest. I would think of it. I mean, I don't know. That's kind of an innocuous thing. I mean, to be
It
on center
is,
line
but
all the time is never going to be a bad thing. I don't, not that I can see, but but I know what you mean. Like, it's kind of like, or maybe has that bled into other areas, and I can say for sure that it is not. Like, I'll go out and do, I don't know. I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna go do some steep turns. I haven't done steep turns in a while, but then I never really stick to the. I'll do like a couple of proper ones, but then I'm like, yeah, but I'll start nosing down and playing with the, like sort of getting, teasing accelerated stalls, or I don't know, just but that gets back to what Eric Grizzly was talking about, where it's just like fly the plane, when we had Carrie McCauley on last year before, whatever it was, and he just said, look out of the clear parts of the plane and just fly the damn thing. And it just really, because he was just talking about how you don't know what you don't know, and there's an envelope there, and you have to go out on your own and in a safe way allow yourself to get out of point A to point B flying and feel the, you don't have to go to the bleeding edge, but go figure some stuff out. But yeah, but tail wheel is the thing that screwed me all up completely. That was when I was like, oh, because I used to feel like landings were a little bit of a chance. I don't know why. I just felt like, oh, that's how that one worked out. And then you do tail wheel and you're like, everything is exactly to the inch whatever you tell it to do.
are there any aspects when you're going through training that you are trying to perfect, and it may had a negative impact on your overall training or whatever you were working on at that time? And the same goes for you, Ted. The same question for you.
You go, Ted.
Oh no, you go ahead. So I'm over here trying to figure out which episode Carrie McCauley was on. So
Oh yeah.
please
no.
go
So-
ahead. Yeah.
So I mean, that's kind of what tonight's topic is about. Is so getting back to the landings, the center line. I agree with you; it's fairly innocuous.
Uh-huh.
But even when I'm 250, 300 hours in, even now, I know it's going to come as a surprise to a lot of the people in the audience, especially the chat. Most of my landings are pretty doggone good. Okay.
Yeah.
But I go through my rough patches.
Yeah.
And even then, though, what I call rough patches, I think a DPE would have said that's a perfectly acceptable landing.
Oh yeah. I mean, like my instructor, he basically just said, if the center line is between the mains, you're totally good, kind of thing. And he was pretty hard on me about, not like yelling at me or anything, but just I think he demanded more out of me than I think what most would demand out of their students, and he was very critical. Even when I look back at these videos I have, and I'm like, that was a fine landing, And he was kind of, so he, I think, helped me develop that. But I do think that he was, because CFIs, they, are the fundamentals of instruction, they they are understandably in the middle of this wrestling match of building confidence, what's good enough, what's safe, what is an ideal standard, what is a perfection standard. And I think that when you, especially when you're learning, they are figuring out where to strategically, based on the entirety of your performance, lower the bar at certain times, or maybe even for certain lessons when you're just, it's clear you're not like, that you're beating yourself up a little bit, and they know when to lower the bar to help you breed that confidence that you need to then get to the level that they really have in sight for you.
And we learn that down the road. Go ahead, Ted. You were about to say something?
Yeah. I think I've seen CFIs who jump instantly at lowering the standards is the hazardous attitude of resignation. And I completely disagree with that. Don't get hung up on the hazardous attitudes about that. Good enough is good enough. And especially when you're learning. And I think that example of lowering the standards so you can continue to progress is completely valid.
Well,
I've also got
to
to go
that
back.
point,
I
though,
was having trouble finding the episode with Carrie McCauley. It's episode 14. So it's been a little while. So,
yeah, man, it has been a hot minute.
yeah, go
I
ahead.
guess I see where instructor pilot CFIs to push for that perfection. It was made in a comment in the chat, a Lombardi quote: "Perfection is impossible, but chasing it will yield excellence," or something to that effect. Set the bar high. And if you get a little bit below, you're still fine. I feel like we understand it now. If you're a 50-hour pilot or 25-hour pilot and you're trying to learn how to land, it seems that you have to do A, B, C, and D to get perfection, which it's never that clean and simple. As an 1,100-hour pilot, I now know, and it's not that I'm a CFI, but I've seen that movie enough. I've experienced it enough to where we can gain that perfection just because we've been there before. And it's harder to do as a student pilot. So I think this is probably a message for our listeners out there that are going through training or low time pilots, or maybe rusty pilots. If you haven't been in the plane for a while, it's okay to want every landing or whatever procedure or every radio call or whatever it is that you're doing. It's okay to strive to be the best, but understand that you can land the plane and still use it again, and it doesn't have to be a greaser. You can stumble over a radio call. They're going to understand what you're saying, and they're going to give you a response. You know what I mean? It doesn't have to be perfect every single time.
Yeah, giving yourself some grace will go a long way for you to get better at things too, because we've all had those moments where you did something stupid in the airplane and then you lay down to go to sleep that night and you just relive the cringe of that frustration, where it's just like, why? Like when I was training, and that, the only time in my life when I forgot to put the flaps back up and on a touch and go. Oh boy. And
landing on the wrong runway. That one stayed with me for a long time.
Yeah. So we all have those things, and there's going to be more, and that's just how it goes. I mean, I had a thing where we were just getting taxi instructions out of Owensboro the other day, and I was looking at the winds, and I was checking everything out before I called to get the taxi clearance, and I was like, we're expecting runway whatever it is, 24 or whatever it is there, and there's a shorter crossing runway that was perhaps more aligned with the wind, but I just assumed they were not going to run us there, and they were going to give us the longer runway, which is where most operations were running. Got the taxi clearance, and he actually said to me, and I wrote down, cleared a taxi to whatever, 2-4 or whatever it is, and then whatever the instructions were to get there. And then I was like, okay, great, and I started to get everything together and started moving in the sort of FBO area, and it just occurred to me when I was looking at the taxi map, and I was looking at out front, and I was looking at, and I was like, where am I going? And I realized that he gave me the crossing runway.
Right.
And my expectation bias had fully I mean, I wrote it down, I read it back, all of that, and still my brain was just not, and if I would have done something like that early on, it would have really kind of freaked me out. Like, oh my God, I almost went to the wrong runway or whatever. And they probably would have yelled at me or I don't know, something. And now I told my passenger, who's also pilot, partner in the plane, and I was like, "Yep, that was a what they call expectation bias." And
It's got a
just,
name.
yeah, I mean, I figured it out. It wasn't a bad thing, but it was just, so I think there's an art form to learning how to be critical of yourself and be perfectionistic minded, but also forgiving of yourself, and don't do anything that is a response to set yourself back. There's so many areas of expertise in flying. If this one thing is not great, that's fine. This other thing's probably doing better than normal. It's a game of a lot of variables.
Absolutely.
I want to change the topic slightly. How much experience do you two have flying in turbulence, and especially with autopilot in turbulence?
I have a lot.
I would say I have a fair amount too, a lot.
You notice that autopilot fights the turbulence way too much.
Yeah.
I'll often click it off because you just need to be headed roughly in the correct direction, roughly at the right pitch of the plane. And the autopilot wants to just fix all of that, and to the detriment of the flying. And I mean, it feels worse, and it is worse. And I think that's a great example of it, where just turn off the autopilot, just go, stay within 20 degrees either way. You'll be
there.
fine. You're not. This is
VFR,
not the time for
VFR.
yeah.
VFR.
Low VFR.
Low VFR.
Low VFR with your vegetables. That's not the time where you can achieve perfection, and that's a time where it's actually worse if you do.
Right. That's a great point. It's even in IFR conditions and you're on a assigned heading, they're not going to know if you're off by 2 or 3 degrees. And that's really where turbulence is going to knock you around to, especially on the altitudes. You can't maintain a constant altitude and constant chop. It's impossible to do. So it's a great point.
Yeah.
Anything else? Do you
Yeah.
guys want to hit on, the overall message here, especially for our earlier in their journey pilots, those that are getting started. If you find that you're hitting a plateau, one of the reasons may be is that you're shooting for perfection when maybe a little less will do. So, embrace the suck, as we like to say.
Yeah. It's kind of like if you're trying to get the girl, you you don't. There's a fine line between being interested in someone and being a stalker, right? Like you don't want to be, you don't want to be so fixated that you push away the very thing that you are hoping to achieve.
I'm a big fan of the Smartless podcast with Jason Bateman, Will Arnett, and Sean Hayes, and Jason Bateman calls it sexy indifference.
Yes,
You have sexy indifference about your patterns in aviation. So, anything else, gentlemen, that we want to cover before we wrap up this episode?
There's also a phrase that comes from the Ask the A&Ps podcast, as a card-carrying member of the Church of Mike Bush, who is on that podcast. Their term that they use all the time talking about mechanical issues is TLAR, TLAR. And it's a kind of a scientific principle that they'll refer to, and it's that looks about right. And
I love it.
And sometimes that's what you need, right? It's what's the number? What should I be flying here? Whatever. That looks about right. And so it's another way to put it. If you
or
don't like
swag.
sexy indifference, swag, exactly.
Scientific wild ass guess.
Yes. Yes.
So.
How many of these do you have, Ben? You're an encyclopedia of these things.
You read a lot, Brian, and I
You
had
read a
to
lot. What are
absorb
you
some things
reading?
a lot.
Hey,
But I
I
want
like
to
this.
pick up on some things. It's been a pretty active chat. We like to go ahead.
Yeah, I've got a couple that of chat comments that I picked up on here. BitShifter early on reminded us of the quote, "Perfect is the enemy of good," which is true. Also a common software engineering thing. And Curly also said, "You can have a perfect radio call or be a bag of words contributor. Win-win."
I
And I'd
love
say,
it.
yeah, either way, we do welcome your bag of words contributions.
Nice.
Yeah, we have programmatic vehicles for your documented failures. If you just make a terrible radio call, you can send it to us and we will reboot our bag of words segment. It turns out that a lot of people don't want to share their terrible radio calls. So we are going to issue a new challenge. Get out there, make some terrible radio calls and send them to us so we can all enjoy it.
Ben might buy you something from the merch store if you do it.
Mm.
Just to throw a carrot out there. Well, we want to thank everybody in the chat on the live stream. Remember, you can join us on Monday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern at youtube.com/@Midlife Pilot Podcast. And, as I've said before, Brian and Ted look at me as a father figure, and I wanted to include this week's bit of wit and wisdom. Success is stumbling from failure to failure with no loss of enthusiasm.
I like that.
Yeah.
Stumbling from failure to failure. That's good. Yeah.
Y'all, it's been a fun one. And you know what? It's been so much fun. I think we should do this again real soon.
Let's do it soon.
Okay.
Great.
Signing off, episode 107 of the Midlife Pilot Podcast. We appreciate you guys. Thanks for joining. Take care.